All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome back to Everything College Football Podcast. Today, me and Nick here, we're doing our first mock draft of the 2023 off season. It's been a long time coming, Nick. Very excited to get this going. You did the odds, I did the evens, and kicking things off, with the Chicago Bears. Many anticipate this will be a pick that ends up getting traded. The Bears are not really in the market for a quarterback, and I think they can get a lot of draft capital towards this rebuild by trading this away. But there's also some elite defenders at the top of this big board. So what do you think Chicago's going to do here at the top of the board? Obviously, we do not mock trades. So if the Bears are intending on selection, do you have them shocking the world and taking a quarterback, or is it going to be one of those defenders?
By virtue of that, we do not mock trades. I'm going to have them stay at this pick, and I have them going with defender. I think they trust Justin Fields. I think Justin Fields is too young and too raw talented of a quarterback to abandon him this early on in his development cycle. So I have them taking Will Anderson Jr., the edge rusher at the University of Alabama. 6'4", 243. Edge rusher, just so talented top to bottom. 10 sacks this past season, 13 tackles for loss, 28 total tackles. Will Anderson, talented guy, good attacker on the edge, gets after the quarterback, a lot of pressure, a big guy, tough to block. A lot of teams had to double team him this year. We saw that at Texas. They had to double team him. He still got a few times back there and put some pressure on the quarterback. Will Anderson, I think, is got to be number one overall pick for me right now. I think his presence on the edge is just too hard to pass up for a team like Chicago that needs a help in a lot of different areas.
Will Anderson, exceptional burst, some nice inside moves. Sometimes those double teams are not always successful. One thing he needs to work on, though, is that burst certainly gets him in trouble. I think it was against Texas. He had 4 offside penalties, and that was a close game. They won by a point at the buzzer. So obviously you can not continue to do that. Of course, he's an elite player, so they'll let him get away with it, but Saban's certainly not happy. Eventually he's going to reach his breaking point, as will the NFL coaches. Number 2 overall, Houston Texans. Lovie Smith went for 2, won the season finale, which bumped them down to pick number 2 before he got fired. I think that's kind of funny, kind of a bad omen for the franchise because he kind of knew his job was finished, even though that probably was not the right decision. We're not sure who the head coach is going to be here at Houston just yet, but regardless, I think Bryce Young's got to be the pick here. Exceptional talent, elite in the pocket. He hears footsteps like no other. He's very calm and collected. Elite accuracy. Doesn't matter if he's on the move or in the pocket under pressure. He does not fold one bit. Can be in the middle of the field or deep downfield. He doesn't exactly have elite arm strength by any means, especially compared to a guy like Will Levis or maybe even C.J. Stroud. But his accuracy does not waver downfield. I think from a mechanics standpoint, a leadership, and a football IQ standpoint, this is the top quarterback in the draft. Obviously, his size is a bit of a concern, but I'm not really too worried about that. This is a guy that I think is going to come in day one and make a big-time impact. Generational type talent in Bryce Young, and a lot of people I think are kind of disrespecting Young due to his size and maybe, not ending up winning a national championship or a back-to-back Heisman, some things that really do not matter here in the future. Bryce Young, top quarterback in the draft.
I agree with this statement. I think people do kind of cut him a little bit of trouble considering his, he's 6 foot, 194 is the measurements I have on him. But Bryce Young is so talented. We saw it last year. It was a lot of times where the offensive line just let him down. He had to create plays himself. He was dodging defenders left, right, and center. There's very clear clips of that Texas game, LSU game, where he really makes plays that look like they're going to be a 10-yard loss on a sack into a 30, 40-yard gain and even a touchdown potentially. His awareness on the field, his ability to make plays with his feet if he needs to stand in the pockets, dart that pass in there. I think this is just a perfect quarterback. 2021 a Heisman winner. I really think that the size, it certainly can be a concern at the next level. I think the size difference between college and the pros and the ability to play with that difference we see with Kyler Murray, I think it is certainly a conversation to be had. But I think Bryce Young has so much talent here. When you look at the Texans, this is a team that needs so much help. I think it also helps that, John Mechie will come back at some point. That's a weapon that Bryce Young threw to in the past at Alabama. I think this makes way too much sense for Alabama. We don't know who the head coach is going to be at the Houston Texans. Certainly we'll have a head coach by the time they make this pick, but it's got to be Bryce Young for me.
Looking at number 3, the Arizona Cardinals, a team that probably didn't expect to be here. They won, I think it was 10, 11, I think maybe 12 games last year with Cliff Kingsbury. He's now out. Kyler Murray coming off a torn ACL. You had J.J. Watt retiring, so you're losing some leadership on that side of the ball. This is a team I think is a lot better than the 3rd overall pick. So that's why I think it's going to be a luxury here when they can land Jalen Carter, a complete disruptor in the middle, an Aaron Donald type player. I thought he was the best player on the defensive line for Georgia at times 2 years ago when they had, Devontae Wyatt, Jordan Davis, 2 other first-round picks. Carter, at times on tape, flashed as the number 1 player on that defense. Just a complete game wrecker in the middle, a lot of strength, quick feet, nice little burst, too, in the middle of that defense. The traits are pretty simple when it comes to an elite defensive tackle. Just watch Aaron Donald, the same things you could see in Jalen Carter. I think the potential is certainly there for him to be a multi-time All-Pro.
I love Jalen Carter to Arizona here. I think this is a great fit for a team that doesn't really have a whole lot of holes. You look at the roster top to bottom, 6'3", 310, a huge plug in the middle there, great on the tackle, good against the quarter, against pressure in the quarterback, 33 quarterback pressures last year, second all-team SEC this past season. The size is fantastic. He really does plug those running lanes great. I like the speed he has, even considering, how big of a guy he is. He has great speed, he can get after the quarterback. Good first step, too. I think this is a great pick for Arizona because they get a guy who can develop on the interior defensive line and be a strong piece in the middle for years to come.
Look at number 4. I have C.J. Stroud going to the Indianapolis Colts. That whole dream of trying to trade for a veteran, the lead of quite outstanding roster, it's going to have to die here. I think they need to finally take the gamble on a young quarterback. And C.J. Stroud, this is a guy, final career game, I expected him to have a field day against Georgia, but he was even better than I thought. He was completely focused, did not miss on a single throw. Finally got his legs involved a good bit. It was the best game I've ever seen him play, which, again, I did expect him to have a great day, but, man, was I mind blown. And that certainly is a game that potentially might make him the number 1 quarterback in the draft. I think a lot of people would not be shocked if he ends up going over Bryce Young, which I think is certainly understandable. He's also very impressive in the pocket, does not get rattled by opposing pressure, knows where he wants to go with the football. Obviously, the Ohio State system's a little bit more simpler than the one at Alabama, but it requires tough reads and tough throws, and he can throw to the boundary with effort. With little effort, that is. He can throw downfield with precision and accuracy. Just his footwork is phenomenal. Him and Bryce Young, pretty similar prospects, I'd say, in that regard. Is this the ideal pick for Indianapolis here at 4?
I think this is a good fit. Indianapolis does need a quarterback ever since Andrew Luck has retired. It's been a revolving door, and the team is really solid top to bottom as the roster overall. I think if they get a strong head coach in there, plus potentially this quarterback that could, light up the field at any point in any given play, I think this is what you want to see. 6'3", 218. Great poise in the pocket, 41 touchdowns this past season, 6 interceptions. Big Ten Offensive Player of the Year in 2021, Heisman Trophy finalist in 2021 as well. Good in the spread. I think that's where he fits out best. I think he could use a year on the bench to learn a playbook a little bit, get more comfortable in the NFL. I don't think he's quite ready for day 1 starter, in my opinion. I think he's more of a second-year option. I think he's got incredible size and versatility as well. I like what he can do. The Ohio State system, I think, kind of concerns me because we have seen in the past where some Ohio State quarterbacks have come to the pros and really not lived up to expectations, which I think is sort of one of his big downsides for me. I think this would be a good fit in Indianapolis because it's a team that certainly needs a quarterback, and this guy can place it on any part of the field. We saw it against Georgia. He picked that secondary apart. This is a very strong secondary, and this would be a good pick at number 4.
Look at number 5, the Seattle Seahawks get the number 5th overall selection due to the Russell Wilson trade. I mean, they completely won that. I think we can all agree on. You have them going with Myles Murphy. Obviously, the defensive side of the ball needs a lot of work. And Murphy, this is a guy coming out of Clemson that can win with power. He's got some nice speed, very impressive athletic ability for being 6'5", 275. A great spin move. He's not exactly great versus the run. I think sometimes he gets affected by trying to shed blocks. Kind of an Aiden Hutchinson type comparison because he can really use his hands well. And again, that aforementioned spin move, that's really been something that's been a big part of Hutchinson's game. How do you feel about Myles Murphy going to number 5? A very quiet edge rusher, does not seem to get a lot of love, but I think going to the pros, a lot of the scouts and GMs are going to show him plenty.
I think Myles Murphy deserves a little more respect in the draft process. 6'5", 275. Didn't have the best season at Clemson this past season, but I think he's scheme versatile, can fit into multiple different types of setups here. I love the explosiveness. The first step is fantastic. The big downside is the run production, right? The run defense production is kind of lacking at times. We saw it at Clemson this past season. There were issues on run plays for him. He kind of looked a little bit lost. I like the spin move. I like the power he has. Like I said, that explosive first step is fantastic. He can beat an offensive tackle with ease on the side that they throw him on. He versatile plays left or right side potentially. I think this would be a great fit for a team in Seattle that gets a good pick here at number 5, winning that trade. I think they have a solid roster. It's a playoff team. This team made the playoffs this past season. They have a lot of good pieces they're building with. I think their quarterback situation is more of a long-term issue, so I don't think they should take quarterback at this point in time. I think they should just keep stacking up on pieces they need, and taking an edge rusher here makes a whole lot of sense.
And another Clemson player, Brian Bresee, is going to go to Detroit here at 6. Now, this is a team, last year we were both very happy they did not take a quarterback. I was really concerned they were going to because I felt like they had a lot of draft capital to build around Jared Goff. And, man, he had a great year, and they were, a game away from, they were a few cards away from being in the playoffs, rather. I think they took care of business there against Green Bay, and they just needed a little bit more help. Did not quite get it. But this was a really good football team, especially in the back half of the year. They contested against everybody. And I think defense is clearly a big concern. They're going to draft a lot of defenders, especially with 2 early picks. Brian Bresee at surge strength, understands leverage, moves with great lateral quickness. He needs to find a little bit more aggression, as he does have the motor to go with that. And I think when that starts to kind of go up in his system, he's going to be a real nightmare to guard in the middle. Not quite as good as Jalen Carter, but Brian Bresee's not far behind. A former number 1 recruit coming off a torn ACL. I think number 6 slots in perfectly for him here.
I think the big concern for me here is that torn ACL.
Has he been able to fully recover from that injury in his sophomore season? We saw it this season. He did play well for Clemson this past season, but that injury is certainly something to concern about. But I think the Detroit Lions do not worry necessarily about taking a player that has injury concern history. Of course, it took Jamison Williams last year in the first round. I like the draft capital this team has here, 2 first-round picks here at 6 and at 18. I think they're going to go defense on both these picks. I think Bresee makes a whole lot of sense for me. Great speed, great movement, could be a great starting defensive tackle. I think his fundamentals are fantastic. They got to grow a little bit on his first step, but I think top to bottom, he's really good. Tough to run against him. Going to need some double teams. You're gonna try and run on his side of the field. I think he's a good player and get after the quarterback, put some pressure, and kind of help develop this Lions defense that's improving with the addition of Aiden Hutchinson last year, and they're kind of building something together in Detroit.
At number 7, the Las Vegas Raiders, we have him going with Will Levis. Regardless of what happens with Tom Brady, he's the favorite to end up in a Raider uniform. I still think they should take Will Levis because this is a guy that has crazy arm strength. A lot of people have him as the number 1 prospect for a reason. Great, a quick, snappy release. He can absolutely throw bombs downfield. And that certainly gets him in trouble. A lot of high throws. He needs to learn to take some heat off the ball. It leads to drops. And his mental processing is not the sharpest. This is a guy that really struggles under pressure. He doesn't always go through his reads. I think those are some things that are certainly going under-noticed, I would say, with some of these draft scouts. I think, I trust him, of course, but it seems to be not talked about enough. So regardless of what happens with Tom Brady, Will Levis is the ideal pick here. Derek Carr on his way out, unfortunately. A guy we all root for. Levis, though, I think this might be one of the more overhyped players, but I think it's well regarded because arm strength like this, arm talent, I guess, as a whole, is hard to find.
Boomer bust prospect here for me. I think this guy has the best ceiling upside available in this first round in terms of a home run pick here, especially if they have Tom Brady in the system to kind of lead him and kind of develop him. In the past, we saw the Patriots.
Brady, that was kind of like
their plan to develop Garoppolo. Of course, it didn't really work out how they envisioned, but Garoppolo is a fantastic quarterback at the 49ers. I think Will Levis could kind of sit behind a quarterback like Brady and get comfortable with the system. The arm strength, fantastic, incredible arm strength. Yes, he overthrows receivers occasionally, but I think he'll kind of get in a better coaching system. He can kind of focus that. The slow processing, the turnovers, plus some poor decision-making leaves concerns for me, which is why I think some people do not believe he's a first-round talent. I think he has all the talent in the world, the best upside available. But those turnovers got to cut down on that. 10 interceptions this past season in Kentucky. Also, the decision-making, throws the ball into some dangerous areas, gets a little happy feet in the pocket sometimes. I think Will Levis is a fun prospect, and if he ends up in the right system, in the right setup, he'll be a star in the NFL. But if he gets thrown into a situation where he's going to start day one in it with a not a great scheme fit, that could definitely be a bad pick, potential written all over it. But this guy, like the upside here and the arm strength.
I do think the supporting cast would be nice. Working in Josh McDaniel's system would be as well. And if he has Tom Brady there to coach him up, he couldn't get better than that. So I think that would certainly be an ideal selection. Number 8, we're going to go down the big board a bit here. Nolan Smith. This is a guy coming off an injury of his own. Good speed rusher, though. His size of 235 pounds sometimes leads to him getting lost in traffic. But he works hard versus the run nonetheless. He does need to add some more size and strength because he's not exactly a gap shooter. This is a phenomenal edge rusher. I was very excited for him coming back for his senior year. Felt it would be a big opportunity for him to boost his draft stock. And unfortunately, he got hurt 2 months into the year. But I certainly think the film talks for itself. I do think he's kind of secured himself a first-round selection here. I'm going to go a little high than most people will say. I think number 8, the Falcons roster needs a lot of help, especially on defense. They still need to build their pass rush up, and I think Nolan Smith is a good selection here.
I like Nolan Smith here. Injury certainly is something to concern about. I like what he can do. Great athleticism. Very physical player, one of the hardest hitters in college football.
Versus Falcon play well against the run
and the pass. I think the one thing, a little bit better.
I think that's the one kind of downside
in this game is I think you got to work on that, but that's, practice certainly can teach that and develop that over time. Also, I think his hand-to-hand combat skills, the fighting on the offensive line against the offensive line could use a little more help. But outside of that, I think there's a lot of upside here. Guy that's going to rehab here, going to build himself up and get back into that position. Love the size, 6'3", 235. I think he's got all the talent in the world, and I think this is a good spot from Atlanta, a team that could use a lot of help on defense. Stays close to home, stays in the state of Georgia, and I think this makes a lot of sense to me.
Looking at the Carolina Panthers, the team's very interesting. Kind of seemed like they were tanking there, but they didn't exactly do it the proper way. I mean, they ended up 9th overall, but they won a lot of games this year compared to what they were probably supposed to do. Seemed like they were offloading players for assets, but I think number 9 here, they're going to go ahead and take a guy that also has high upside in Tyree Wilson, a Trayvon Walker type player, I think, coming out of Texas Tech. Strong, physical, he's a 3-down guy. Good bend for being 6'6", 275, some good quickness, nice change of direction, a high effort player. His test numbers at the combine, kind of like Trayvon Walker's, will be very important in where he ends up. But I think if he hits it out of the park, he's going to be a lock for a top 10 pick. Another one of those players that nobody talks about, probably because he played in the Big 12 for a Texas Tech team that I think was actually pretty solid, but he did opt out of his last game or two at Texas Tech. So we'll see if there's any character concerns there. But Wilson, he's a high upside player that can play in coverage as well. Very athletic specimen. Number 9 to Carolina.
Player I've been keeping my eye on since he opted out at Texas Tech the later part of the season. Love the size here, physically dominant, great positional versatility. Can kind of play wherever you need him here. I think he fits well on that right side of the edge rusher, but potentially can move him around. I think the speed is a little questionable at times. I think the speed is certainly a knock on him. I want to see a little bit more of the reactions to, a bit quicker of a reaction. I think the athleticism is there though. The versatility on this on the defensive side is great. Can play wherever you need to put him. I like this.
Carolina needs a ton of help.
They look like a mess this year. They're going to have a new coach that can kind of build something that he wants to build. And I think getting a guy like Wilson on the defensive side of the ball that can add some pressure to the quarterback, and if you can work on that speed and develop it into a better player, we'll see how he tests the combine. This guy could be a great top 10 pick.
I think Steve Wilkes, he's actually probably going to come back. I think he's the favorite to be retained as head coach. I think that would probably be the right move. Number 10, Philadelphia Eagles, much like the Bears, I think they're going to trade back. There's no way they hold on to this pick. But if they do, they can do whatever they want with it. So we're going to get a little creative here. And I say, why not add a slot weapon? There's very dynamic. And Jackson Smith-Njigba from Ohio State, unfortunately, battled a hamstring injury all year long. Only saw him catch 2 passes all year. Highly unfortunate. We really wanted to see him play this year. But regardless, a great slot guy with concentration, a good change of direction. This is a guy who's an overall playmaker. Catch the ball anywhere on the field and make an impact. Of course, the last game I guess we really saw him play was that Rose Bowl where he had 340 yards or 320, whatever the number was. He had 300-plus yards. That is absurd. Running all over the Utes defense in that one. 10, the Philadelphia Eagles. Of course, I don't think they'll hold on to this pick, but if they do, why not take a guy that can make a difference and help Jalen Hurts out even more?
This is a team that is phenomenal, one of the best teams in the NFC, the favorites right now to go to the Super Bowl. So why not add a talented player who can really be just an explosive piece to add to an already solid offense? The speed is fantastic here. Hands and ball skill, ridiculous. The body control, the route running, all of it's fantastic. Just look at the tape from the Rose Bowl against Utah, right? If you want to see a 100% put together perfect game from wide receiver, that's the game to look at. It's a shame he's been injured all year because I think Ohio State would have won a national championship had he not been hurt. I think he is just so talented top to bottom. CJ Stroud seemed to find him when he needed to in the past. This is a great wide receiver who's got so much speed, so much talent. I think he's going to be a great pick wherever he ends up. I don't know if he'll end up with the Eagles considering the trading whole thing, but this would be a great player to get in Philadelphia, considering they already have Devontae Smith and they have Jalen Hurts there, who's a very solid quarterback that can find his targets in the offense. This is a great guy who can run great routes and would be a really talented, high upside pick here.
Look at number 11, Tennessee. Mike Vrabel, heck of a coach, but there's some holes on this roster. But regardless of how bad the roster may seem, they've certainly accomplished a lot. Paris Johnson, I think they need some help up front. They also need some help probably in the secondary. I think the defensive line is exceptional, but the offensive line not as much. Paris Johnson, a guy with a strong core. He's a very nasty run blocker. And you have Derrick Henry running behind you, a very durable running back. Why not give him a guy with some wide base who's pretty nasty? Sometimes he has a hard time latching on at the second level. I think it's certainly benefit to add a better punch and better hand usage as well, because he has some good length that I don't think fully gets utilized. I think Mike Vrabel, this would be a very good addition to their offensive line. I
agree. This is a solid player here. I think he had a good year at Ohio State. I think a good spot here at tackle, potentially throw him at the left or right side, depending on what you want to do with the versatility there. I like the size, top to bottom, I like the speed he has as well. And I think this Tennessee team is not a bad team by any means. And I think they're going kind of growing as a team. And this is a guy you can kind of slot in day one, get snaps, and be productive as a rookie.
Looking at number 12, Houston Texans. They already got Bryce Young. Do they give him some weapons or do they give him some help? I'm going to go with Peter Skronsky. Of course, Larry Tunsil is expected to come back. I believe his contract is expiring soon, or he's just going to get a flat-out extension for a lot of money. Titus Howard, he hasn't been exactly great for them. Skronsky, a guy who's Not the biggest, about 320 pounds, I think. Great balance and hands, though. His work ethic, his football IQ, those all stand out. He'll likely kick the inside unless he adds on some more bulk and power. But right tackle could certainly be a good fit for him. The Texans, they need a lot of help at every single position. I think this would be a great way to get things started, taking a tackle to protect a new quarterback. Skronsky's probably going to be the best tackle in this draft. But I think his lack of size, it's not a full lack of size, but it's certainly not comparable to Johnson's. I think he's going to fall to the second tackle taken here. But Houston, I think they get a great player who's going to be a multi-year starter.
Good leader at Northwestern. The size definitely could be a potential concern. 6'4", 294. I think he fits in well here. High IQ in all phases of the game, proficient with his hand usage, good mover in the run game as well. The size is definitely there. The arm's length, a little short there. The transition to inside, that would have to be something you have to look at here. He played left tackle at Northwestern. They're going to have to probably move him to right tackle or in the interior. I think this would be a good fit for the Texans because, second pick, the top 15. They already grabbed a star quarterback here. Get a guy who can protect your valuable asset. I think this is a solid piece to have.
Look at number 13, the Jets. Christian Watson last year was my highest rising player. At least that's what I said going into the off season. He ended up living up to that. And I think we're going to see another guy named Christian rise up the draft boards. I said this a couple weeks ago. I felt like he would skyrocket in the top 15, and that's where you find him on many big boards, including the one we're looking at. This is a guy that really tracks the ball well. He can run with burners while being 6'2", 201. Struggles with some double moves, and ball skills aren't the best, but he does have long arms and closes good. He can even lay a boom as well. This is a guy who can play in man coverage. They just drafted Sauce Gardner, who was amazing this year, all-pro level player. Kick Gonzalez to go the other side of him. Robert Saleh's finally starting to get those pieces he wants on defense. And, man, this is going to be one tough corner duo to crack for the next couple of years at least.
This would be a fantastic pick for the Jets here. I think their defense, loading up on defense makes a whole lot of sense. Of course, people probably want to take a quarterback. The Jets will not be taking a quarterback, in my opinion. I think they just cannot afford to waste another pick on a quarterback. I love the length, love the athleticism, the speed, the instincts. This guy can get after the ball. Great defensive player, good coverage skills, great in man-to-man. I think this would be a solid guy to have in this Jets defense, considering they took Sauce Gardner. That partnership would be fantastic in the secondary at the cornerback position. I like this piece top to bottom. I think it's going to continue to rise up on draft boards. The size is good for me. 6'4", 215. I like the size. Good tape at Oregon. This would be a great pick.
Look at number 14, a Bill Belichick-type player, and Brian Branch. Malachi Moore had that position at Alabama, and Branch ended up taking it over. And he earned the spot, Nick. He flat-out outplayed Moore, and that's what's gotten him here. A very versatile player, can play in the slot, can play in safety, good effort off the edge. His run defense is inconsistent, but when he makes plays in the back end, he does it with physicality. Gets a lot of pass breakups, too. This is a guy that, is pretty much a linebacker at times with the way he gets his hands up and deflects passes. He also cover underneath quite well. Very fluid type player. You've seen the year Marcus Jones had for the Patriots. Bill Belichick gets another versatile defensive back here. Seems like an A-plus fit.
It's a good safety out of Alabama. Like high football IQ, versatile run defender. I think he is pretty good against the run. I think there are some situations where he gets lost a little bit. I think he's a solid run defender. Great against the pass as well. Solid pass breakup ability. I get a little concerned about the man coverage. I think that just slightly on the tape. I think there's some instances where it just does not look fantastic. But this is a good fit for the Patriots. Bill Belichick loves to come after Alabama players. He has a great relationship with Nick Saban. I think Brian Branch is kind of that leader that they love to have in the locker room. The size, 6 foot 193, solid, 52 total tackles at Alabama this past season. Beat out Malachi Moore, which a lot of people thought was a more talented player. I think Brian Branch here has earned himself in the top 15. I think the Patriots would be a great fit for the player and for this program.
Next up, the Packers. They never seem to take offensive weapons in the first round, but I feel like this year might be the year they break that curse. Quentin Johnston, phenomenal pass catcher. This is a guy that can play out wide, 6'4", 215. He's got plenty of size. And, I feel like he's bigger with the physicality he plays with. Can win jump balls. He does that very frequently. Great yards after catch ability. Remember Drake London from a year ago from USC. One of his best attributes was his ability to just be tough and physical after the catch and drag defenders, and that's something Johnston does as well. He's got some pretty good speed as well. Interested to see how he tests at the combine, but I think if it's a very solid 4-4 number or even in the 4-5 range, he's certainly going to be a lock for the top 15, and I think the Packers would love to have him, especially after the emergence of the aforementioned Christian Watson. And Rodgers really struggled this year, and, it was certainly due to a lot of miscommunications of his younger pass catcher, so it doesn't make things any easier, but I think over time, having a talented player like this is certainly going to be beneficial.
This would be a great fit for the Packers. They need to continue to add offensive weapons to keep Aaron Rodgers in that good position that he is in. I think this is a great fit here. I love Johnson top to bottom. The speed is fantastic. A great X receiver. I think that's where he'd probably fit in the best position. Tall wide receiver, good size, good hands. The 6'4", 212, over 1,000 yards is receiving at TCU this past season. I love what he can do. Good in good against the coverage as well as press coverage. I like the route running ability, like the speed. I think that this is a guy that's a great weapon. A lot of people rank him as their best wide receiver in the class. I think you can make a case for Jordan Addison or JSN, but I think Quentin Johnston's a fantastic piece and will fit well in the Green Bay Packers.
Number 16, the Washington Packers. Devon Witherspoon out of Illinois is a great man coverage corner with some ball skills. Ryan Walters this past year had a phenomenal defense with the Fighting Illini. A lot of star players on that unit that finally broke out. Witherspoon finds himself in the first round here. How do you feel about the Commanders taking a cornerback?
I think this is a good player. This is probably the second best corner on the board behind Gonzalez. Great in man coverage, good physicality as well. Get in there, can break up passes. I think this Commanders team has some good pieces, and they're building something there in Washington. I think Sam Howell at quarterback is a little bit questionable. I think this guy at cornerback, Witherspoon, is a great fit. Good leader from Illinois, great guy in the locker room. I think this will be a good fit.
Looking at 17, the Steelers, they somehow, again, managed to find their way above 500. Mike Tomlin's a genius, but they've yet to really make a commitment to making sure some of these offensive investments pay off. Kenny Pickett, Najee Harris. The trenches for Pittsburgh is a big problem. Number 17 overall here, I think they got to go with a guy in Broderick Jones, who is a phenomenal run blocker, great leg drive, some nice core strength, his ability to get things done on the ground, and he's even a great pass blocker as well. This is a guy that's going to probably be a bookend tackle in the league. I think this was a must selection here for the Steelers. I think they'd be very upset if Jones was to go ahead of this pick, but if he's there, they got to take him.
I think Jones would be great at left tackle here for the Steelers. Great size, a two-sport athlete coming out of high school, 6'4", 315. I think the film is fantastic with him. He's a great offensive tackle, great in pass protection, solid in run protection as well. Very versatile, can move around where he needs to go, great in the pass sets. A little low on the hand usage as well, but I think outside of that, he's got good leverage, good speed, good size. This would be a great fit for Steelers who are building something with this offense with Pickett and Najee Harris.
Number 18 overall, the Lions, who are really set up to do some damage here, winning season, 2 picks inside the top 18. I think Joey Porter's a selection here. They need some quarterback help. Jeffrey Okudah hasn't exactly developed into an elite player, but I think he certainly had a much better year than a season ago. This is a good player, good man coverage, some quick feet, speed's nice, good length, confidently tracks down the ball. He's a good mental processor as well, but he does need to get a little bit bigger. He's off balance at times. I think his biggest weaknesses and drawbacks are his fundamentals. He doesn't always gear down in man, though. Sometimes the over-aggressiveness certainly gets him in trouble with penalties and often over-running pass catchers. Joey Porter, though, at 18, I think he's going to be another one of those high risers. When teams put on the second round of tape, they're certainly going to see this guy is worthy of a first-round selection.
Penn State has been producing some solid defensive prospects the last couple of seasons. I think Joey Porter's another great piece to come out of the Nittany Lions. Like the size, 6'2", 195. I think that's good for a corner here. This Lions defense is continuing to add pieces and build up on the back of a winning season. I think this is a great fit. Jeff Okudah, improved, like you said, but I've still not sold him fully.
Here for Joey Porter Jr. Grew a whole lot in 2022.
His technique and footwork are fantastic. Getting better and better. The height, speed, and weight, just fantastic. Like I said, I love the size and the speed here. I think he might be a scheme-specific talent, so there might be something to work with. I think, of course, coaching can help with that, but I think the Penn State, sort of scheme is where he kind of fits best, and that might find themselves in a bit of an issue if Detroit's not play something similar to that. But I also think the speed and the way this guy learns, he developed a lot this past season, including work on his footwork and his technique. So I think there's no reason to feel that he can't develop in Detroit. And this would be a great player to get at 18 on the back of already having a pick in Brian Bryce early on in the draft. This would be a great first round for the Detroit Lions.
19th overall, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, regardless of what happens with Tom Brady, we'll just assume maybe he's on his way out. They have Kyle Trask already on roster. Do they go ahead and take another Florida quarterback and Anthony Richardson here, Nick? Or how do you feel the Bucs play this selection here?
For me personally, I can't see the Bucs taking a quarterback. I just think it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for me. I have them taking Osiris Torrance, the guard from Florida. I think this is a good fit. Kind of, get someone in there that has some serious talent, a lot of upside in Torrance. I like the size as well. Good guard. I think you want to have an offensive lineman that is able to protect your quarterback, even if it's not Brady. I think they've seen at times this year that Brady has found himself under some serious pressure while playing in Tampa Bay because It's just a jailbreak on the offensive line at times. I think this would be a good player to have. I think the size is fantastic. I think this player top to bottom is a good piece from Florida. I like the way that he's going to rise in this draft. I think Osiris Torrance makes a whole lot of sense for the Bucs.
The Buccaneers offensive line finally came full circle this year. Ally Marpet retired. Ryan Jensen was hurt until the playoff game. It was just a mess, especially on the interior. They ran for less than 80 yards per contest. Big time issues there. So regardless of who's a quarterback, they need to boost their offensive line. 20th overall, another team like the Lions, the team that kept them out of the playoffs, the Seattle Seahawks. This is a team that is, I think really set up for success in the future. And I think with the 20th overall selection, they need to take another defender, Trenton Simpson. This is a guy that plays with a lot of speed. He's very fast, comes downhill in a hurry. Great change of direction also. Has the abilities in coverage. Needs to learn to be more fluid and disciplined in coverage, and I think that'll certainly come with some more coaching. But all the raw skill sets are there. This is a guy I think is going to make a big-time impact. You look at Seattle all the way back in the first round, adding Miles Murphy. You add his teammate as well. This is going to be a very fast defense, gearing up for the future. How do you feel about Simpson here at 20?
First linebacker off the board at 20. I think Simpson's the guy that's got to go first. 6'3", 235, explosive range in pursuit. Good coverage as well. Great speed, top to bottom. Can get off really well. I like the speed. Good in passing as well. Good hitting power. Great instincts on the field. High football IQ here. Definitely a great defensive player coming out of Clemson. They're going to continue to produce great talent there in Death Valley. I think Simpson is a no-brainer here for the Seattle Seahawks. They could use more defensive talent. You get a guy at linebacker who's got great experience, played a lot at Clemson. Good speed, good size. This would be a great pick for me.
21st overall, the Dolphins forfeited their picks. Owner Ross, he did some tampering and whatnot, so they forfeited that first-round pick. The Chargers, they need some help in the trenches. Lucas Van Ness, he's sitting here, a guy from Iowa that doesn't get any love one bit, but I think he'll start to get some as we get closer to the draft. They need help in the trenches, though, Nick. And Van Ness, he's a guy that can play on the edge. He can play on the interior. I think a strong, a disciplined player coming from Kirk Ferentz's group. I think this will be a very solid addition for the Chargers that do need to get better on the inside.
Right, disciplined, playing in Iowa. Good defensive strength. I like the speed here. This is a team that needs help in the trenches. This guy Van Ness is a dog. He's going to fight every single three-down player here. I think he's got that sort of potential to boost this defense that looked poor at times this past season. I mean, they blew the lead against the Jaguars, so defense could certainly use some help. I think Van Ness, good hitter, good tackle ability, get after the quarterback. Love the speed here. This would be a great pick.
22nd overall, the Ravens. We'll see what happens in the Lamar Jackson saga. Regardless, they need to get better at receiver. Zay Flowers, a guy that's an elite separator. Phenomenal after the catch. This is the type of player they need. Obviously, the scheme's not great, and that's a big reason why Hollywood Brown wanted out. A guy who's a very similar player in terms of size, stature, and his abilities. So will it work again? I don't know, but they certainly need to make an attention to get better at this position. I think the scheme may be headed for a change, especially if Lamar Jackson's gone. I think this is a good way to get things started. And, regardless, though, they didn't have a touchdown by a receiver since week 3, I think, until one of the last 2 games of the year. So they need to get better at pass catcher. This is a good way to do it.
They certainly need to improve at pass catcher. I love Zay Flowers, great player, electric in space, good dynamic after the catch options. The inconsistent hands, sometimes he drops the ball a little inconsistent there, but I think this is a solid player. Love the size, 5'11", 172. I think he's got good speed. I don't think the scheme fit is an issue, but I think there is going to be a change in offensive coordinator at Baltimore, especially if, Lamar Jackson is no longer the quarterback. I think you need to add offensive weapons for whoever's going to be throwing the ball next year. I think a guy like Zay Flowers is a fantastic piece considering how good this defense is for the Ravens.
Looking at the Vikings team, needs a lot of help on defense. They could go anywhere here, but I'm leaning Antonio Johnson from Texas A&M, a safety that can play in the slot. He's also really good at tackling. He can get downhill and lay a bit of a boom. He's not the hardest hitter by any means, but he wraps up. Very efficient player. The Vikings, I think they need to start to get better on this side of the ball. That's certainly been a big weakness for them the last couple of years. And that's a big reason why Mike Zimmer got fired. His defense did not have the talent to fit his scheme. So they really need to rebuild on this side of the ball. Antonio Johnson, the Vikings, probably not the best pick. Maybe they trade up to get a better defender. But I think this is a very solid addition to a defense that needs help.
I think it's a good player. Of course, like you said, trading up is certainly a possibility for this team. Size, versatility, good processing, good tracking ability, good tackling, physicality is certainly there. This is a guy that had a good season at A&M, like the size, 6'3", 195. A little weak on the ball skills, and if he's bounced around a couple different positions, so I think safety is where he should play. But some people say, maybe he's more of a corner. I think his true position is safety, and I think that would be the best fit for him in Minnesota. This is a good Vikings team. They got bounced early in the playoffs. They certainly don't want to have that happen again. So I think this is a good piece to add on defense.
24 overall, the Jacksonville Jaguars. Cam Smith, they need a second cornerback. Tyson Campbell's emerged very well here in his second year for Jacksonville. They need another corner to play opposite of him, though, a guy that's very strong in zone. Maybe not the best fit right away because he's not the strongest of man defenders, but I certainly think with some added attention to that, he's a guy that has a lot of IQ and can play in zone. I think that's really good when you come into the league and potentially make an impact in zone coverage, which can sometimes be complicated for a young prospect. I think this is certainly a player that plays with physicality, has some impressive ball skills. Cam Smith, 24th overall to the Jaguars.
Another solid South Carolina secondary piece going to the draft. I like Cam Smith here. Good size. I think he's a good leader in the locker room as well. Quick feet, fluid hips, good ball skills, great coverage instincts, physical, competitive toughness. This guy's going to fight for you every single down, a dog inside and out. I think the Jaguars could use a second corner. I think he could slot in. It might be more of a developed kind of piece here, but I think the Jaguars, they have a little bit of chance here to take a risk here and develop someone that could really be a boomer bust prospect. I like Cam Smith a lot here.
Looking at 25 overall, the Giants, they need to get some receiver help for Daniel Jones. It looks like they're going to make some commitments to him and Saquon Barkley for the future, coming off a strong playoff game with limited weapons. Jordan Addison, another one of those guys that makes a lot of plays in space, a bit of an undersized playmaker who wins at the point of attack with quickness and his ability to change direction. Very fluid pass catcher. Didn't have the strongest of years at USC after winning the Blitnikoff 2 years ago at Pitt. He's also a little bit banged up, but I think coming into the league, this is going to be a very underrated pass catcher that is certain to leave an impact here for the Giants.
Giants need talent at wide receiver. Jordan Addison fits the bill for me. I love what he can do. Great speed, great player, proven weapon, high volume target in the past, great spatial awareness and body control. The drops early on in his career at Pittsburgh were certainly concerned, but I think he's kind of turned that around a little bit, got better with that. Limited action at USC this past season. I think injuries certainly played a role in that. But that season he had at Pittsburgh 2 years ago, fantastic, incredible year for him. Crafty release, great in the routes, good separation, good after the catch as well, good speed. I think this is a solid player, the top to bottom, great wide receiver, and the Giants could use all the help in the world at wide receiver, considering they've missed on wide receiving picks in the past. And looking at you, Kadarius Toney, I think this would be a great fit in New York.
26th overall, the Dallas Cowboys currently hold this selection. There's some guys, and Tony Pollard and CeeDee Lamb, they're going to have to get paid here soon. A very good Cowboys defense. Their defensive line's not exactly in need, but those guys on offense are going to forfeit. The guys on the defense that are probably going to get contract extensions. It's going to go to those elite players before some of the rotational help on the defensive line. It's very good. I think Elijah Cansey, a very strong anchor here up front, played on a very talented Pittsburgh defensive line. I think this is a guy that's going to slot into Dallas very quickly, and he's going to make an impact. Maybe not in the short term, but I think in the long term for the reasons I just mentioned.
I like Cansey's motor, competitive toughness, good flexibility, a variety of ways to beat blocks, get around the offensive line there. The scheme fit, that may be a downfall because Pitt does have a specific scheme on defense, but I think this is a solid piece. They got to start adding some depth on defense. This is a good Cowboys team, and Cansey would be a good fit.
27th overall, the Cincinnati Bengals, their offensive line probably could use some new help. I mean, they certainly got a lot better compared to a year ago, but Jonah Williams hasn't exactly panned out. Maybe they could go tackle, but I think one need is a tight end, Michael Mayer. Why not go this route? They didn't really need to go with Jamar Chase, but they did anyways. It ended up being an elite selection a couple years back. They don't really need a tight end here, but Michael Mayer, this is a phenomenal playmaker. He lines up in the slot a lot. He was on the field almost every play for Notre Dame. Crafty run blocker. Very good route runner as well. Strong hands. This is a guy that plays with plenty of football IQ as well. I think Michael Mayer give the Bengals and Joe Burrow one more piece to continue to make this offense godly.
Who's a good speed,
transitional player to the NFL. Great pick here. Good line, good blocking as well in both the pass and run game. A mismatch in the middle of the field. Played a whole lot for Notre Dame. Got a lot of touches. Constantly on the field. Got a lot of attention every single game. I like the fit here. I think this is an offense that is fantastic and only get better. You could certainly make the case for adding a piece to offensive line, but I think considering the tackle depth and the offensive line depth available once you get down to the late 20s, I think there's just really no reason to if Mayer's still available because he is so talented. The upside is certainly there.
Looking at the next selection, the Broncos do have a first-rounder this year. Traded Bradley Chubb to Miami, who got that selection via San Francisco in the Trey Lance deal. 28th overall, I think they're going to go Anton Harrison, beef up the offensive line a good bit. One of the lone bright spots on that football team this past year for the Sooners. How do you feel about Harrison, the 28? Do you think the Broncos should continue to build up their offensive line or go elsewhere? Because despite the very disappointing season, this is still one of the better rosters in football. And if they land a guy like Sean Payton, they're really not too many pieces away from competing.
Good size out of Oklahoma here with Harrison, 6'5", 309. I think this is a good piece to add good body type, good pass protection ability. I like the length and the movement skills. A little inconsistent sometimes. Hand placement, not great. I don't know how good he is against the run for the run as well. I think this would be a good piece because the Broncos, this was a bad season top to bottom, but they do get back into the first round with that trade you were talking about. They need some help. This team was definitely a disaster, but a new coach here, kind of building this roster, getting a good tackle here that is a developable player in Harrison is a good pick for me.
Looking at the next selection, the Buffalo Bills, probably the second most complete roster behind the Eagles in the football league. I think that Jamie Robinson here at safety is going to be the way to go. I think that's starting to become a need for them. Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde, they're getting older in the back end, so I think they need to finally get some fresh talent in the back end here, and they do that with Jamie Robinson, a ball-hawking safety who can also come downhill and tackle with authority. I think this is a very good addition here. He's also got some veterans to learn from. I think long-term Robinson's a guy that could really pan out for Buffalo.
It's a good piece here, like the talent of Florida State in the defense.
They've been producing some serious talent. Good coaching down there in Tallahassee. I think Robinson's a great fit. The Bills, we said this last year with them, they really don't have a whole lot of holes, so it's kind of hard to pick a piece for them. It's a very well-rounded team. The defense could use some help, some backup role potentially on the secondary. I think a good safety pick here. And Robinson, a guy high upside, tons of developability, sit behind the defense, learn the playbook. This would be a good pick for me late in the first round.
Looking at the Kansas City Chiefs, this is a defense that still gets stretched vertically a good bit. I think the run defense at times is inconsistent. Chris Jones is a complete monster. Where would they be if they didn't have him? So why not give him a tango partner in Siaka Ika, a complete monster, a Vita Vea comparison really of how big he is and how he plays. He's very good at stuffing the run and getting into the backfield with a high-end motor. I think this is a good pick, 30th overall for the Chiefs. They could benefit by adding some more athleticism, I think, at safety. But I think there's no need to reach here. Go ahead and take a nice, impactful defensive tackle.
Great size, 6'3", 350. That's speed, unbelievable speed considering the size and weight here. Ika's a fantastic piece. Great athleticism, is ridiculous for his size. Raw strength, fantastic. Good upside here. Prototypical size. I like what he can do. Can knock around, get after the quarterback. Good speed. Again, it blows me away on the tape at what he can do considering how big he is. And this is a Chiefs team that is pretty good top to bottom. Maybe want to add an offensive weapon again, but I think this is a good pick here. Kind of stick with this. Grab Ika here, and it'll be a good fit.
Once again, I do think the Eagles will probably trade this pick away. Howie Roseman's a complete chess master, and I think they might even go with a center here to replace Chase and Kelsey eventually. But why not go with Bijan Robinson again at the team? They can have some fun with these selections if they don't trade him away. Crafty running back who's got good size at 220. He's very good at fitting into creases. He really does a good job of breaking tackles as well. Very high-end football IQ player at running back. I think they cap things off in the first round. Bijan Robinson, a very solid selection, even though they'll probably end up going with the offensive line if they don't trade out.
Yeah, I think trading out makes a lot of sense for the Eagles, but if they do stay with this pick, why not take Robinson, right? The speed is there. I don't normally advocate for taking backs in the first round, but with the last pick of the round, I think it makes a whole lot of sense for me. Athleticism, great speed, elusive, can break tackles, good prototype build, positively affects the passing game as well. Good at blocking, very underrated if you watch the film. Actually is a solid blocker in the pass game, which I think is something that's underrated, could be used in Philadelphia. I like Bijan Robinson a lot here. 6 foot, 220. This would be a great pick. I mean, this Eagles team is fantastic, right? They're one of the best teams in the NFL, and you add a guy like Bijan Robinson there who can only get better with time. If you're an Eagles fan, you got to be loving that idea.
Yeah, I think Bijan's also a pretty underrated pass catcher as well. That's me for today's episode, guys. Nick, as always, I appreciate you joining me. This year's draft, probably not as talented as last year's, but it was nice to get this 1.0 out of the way and get a quick little feel early on of how we're feeling coming into this 2023 draft. A lot of changes will be made, of course, not only to our mock, but this draft order as well. Appreciate you joining me.
Yeah, absolutely. This is one of the weaker draft classes in the past couple of seasons, but I think we're going to see some guys at the combine that can produce, get some raw numbers on these guys. Senior Bowl coming up, of course, other stuff, pro days. I think we'll see this draft board change a little bit. But I think some teams here find themselves in a good position. I think Detroit has a real opportunity here to beef in their roster. Philadelphia, Buffalo as well, good opportunities here for this team. And I think this will be continue in a fun process to see what we can do with these mock drafts.
Yeah, I mean, the guys we have going in the top 6 will be highly sought after. I think those guys are all going to be locks to be high-end caliber players. So we'll see how many trades happen. It'll be interesting to watch the process. We'll do plenty of these as the year goes on. It's going to be it for today's episode, guys. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.